I grew up in a house where things seemed too simple to hide any secrets. My name is Clara. I'm 36 years old and I'm an only child, or at least that's what I was told for more than 3 decades. Before diving into this story, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any discoveries. My childhood was peaceful, filled with quiet routines, cornmeal cakes on Sundays, and dinners with little conversation. My parents were always good people, present in their own way but not exactly open. I don't remember deep talks nor spontaneous hugs, but I remember the care. And I remember the way my mother sometimes looked at me as if she was saying more than words could bear. My father was that classic small-town man, button-up shirts, hands marked by time, and an almost magical ability to avoid questions. Any questions? About work, about the past, about the family. Especially about the family. I grew up thinking that was normal. That silence was a kind of quiet affection. I only understood otherwise much later. We lived in a single-story house at the end of the street, with a small garden and a tree that gave too much shade and too little fruit. And there, in all that normality, it never occurred to me that there was something unsaid. That a piece was missing from the puzzle of my story. But one day it appeared. Not the piece. The doubt. It was on an ordinary afternoon when I opened a drawer I never touched, or rather that no one touched, and found a yellowed envelope with my name handwritten on it. It wasn't my mother's handwriting, nor my father's. And inside, there wasn't exactly an answer. There was the beginning of a question that would change everything. The envelope was among old papers half hidden under a pile of paid bills and worn notebooks. It was as if it had been purposely placed there, but without real intention to be found. As if it were part of a silent ritual, kept between guilt and memory. When I read my name on the cover, I felt a strange chill in my stomach. Was it my handwriting? No. It was a firm, masculine handwriting, but with a slight tremor, like someone writing hesitantly. I opened it carefully, not exactly knowing what to expect. Inside there was a letter. Just one sheet, folded in 3 parts. No date, no greeting. And the first sentence was sharp as a knife. Clara, maybe you should never know this. I read that sentence and froze. My heart raced. I thought about tearing the paper as if it never existed. But it was too late. The doubt was already planted, and curiosity is a kind of poison that grows fast. I kept reading. There are things that don't erase with time, they only get buried. And one day time digs them back up. It made no sense. I read it over and over, searching for context. But the rest of the letter was even stranger. It spoke of hard choices, a promise made between adults and a child who had to be left behind. That's when my hand started trembling. The letter ended with a sentence that made me freeze inside. He has always been your brother. And maybe it's time you knew. At that moment, the silence of the house changed. It was no longer the usual silence of an ordinary afternoon. It was the kind of silence that comes when something collapses, even if you don't yet understand what. I closed the letter, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floor for long minutes. My head was spinning. Brother? What do you mean a brother? Why had no one ever told me? The next question hit me like a punch to the chest. Did my parents know? And deep down something told me, yes. They always knew. After reading that letter, the world didn't fall apart. But something inside me shifted. As if the ground was still there but no longer supported me the same way. It was like walking barefoot in a place you knew but now with invisible thorns in the path. I impulsively put the envelope back in the drawer. Not out of fear someone would see it, but because, somehow, I still wanted to believe I hadn't read what I read. That it was a mistake. An old note misinterpreted. A draft of a story that never came true. But deep down, I knew. That night we had dinner in silence. My father watched the news as usual, glasses sliding down his nose, eating slowly. My mother fiddled with her plate, not really paying attention to the food. Everything was as always, except I was no longer the same. I looked at them differently, searching for cracks. Looking at what had always been there but maybe I had never noticed. I started remembering things. Loose details that didn't make sense before and now, little by little, began to align. Like that time when I was about 9. I asked why my father had an old photo hidden in his wallet. It was of a woman I didn't know, holding a child. He said it was a distant relative and changed the subject. I remember his tone. Too quick. Or how my mother always got tense when someone asked about the early years of their marriage. There was always a rehearsed answer, like someone who memorized a lie and repeated it without thinking. That night, while the house slept, I went back to the drawer and read the letter again, trying to find more than what was there. But all I had was the vague, "He has always been your brother." Who? And then another question arose, this time from the bottom of my heart. Does he know about me? Because I knew nothing about him. Not the name, the age, where he was, not even if he was still alive. I only knew he existed. And that was now impossible to forget. The next morning, I woke with the weight of that letter on my mind, as if it had stuck to my skin all night long. The silence of the house felt heavier, almost pushing me to seek answers. I needed to talk to my mother. She had always been the guardian of our story, the one who kept the past between the walls of the house and the heart. Breakfast was quieter than usual. My mother absent-mindedly stirred her coffee, staring out the window as if seeing a world I couldn't see. The smell of fresh bread in the oven didn't bring the usual comfort. When I finally sat at the table, I took a deep breath, trying to control the lump forming in my throat. I knew I had to ask, that the truth was there waiting for me, even if it scared me. "Mom," I started hesitantly, "is there something you need to tell me?" She stopped her hand mid-motion, slowly turned her face and looked at me, her eyes shining with a mixture of surprise, fear, and maybe sadness. I could feel the weight of the answer I needed to hear, but feared at the same time. "About what, honey?" she asked softly, almost a whisper. I took a deeper breath, looking directly into her eyes, feeling urgency grow inside me. "About a brother." The words came out like a confession, delicate yet definitive. Silence took over the kitchen. The ticking clock sounded louder than everything else. My mother closed her eyes for a moment, and when she opened them again, there was a decision there. "Claire, you deserve to know the truth. But this truth isn't easy to tell. There are things in our family's past that have been hidden for a long time. Your father and I decided to protect you, but maybe that was a mistake." She sighed, and her gaze became distant, as if reliving a painful chapter of her own story. "You have a brother. A brother who, for many reasons, was not part of our lives. For a long time he was far away and—" she swallowed the emotion, "we thought it was better that way." My heart tightened. For years, I had lived not knowing that such an important part of my family was hidden away like a locked and forgotten book. "Who is he?" I managed to ask, trying to hold back the tears threatening to fall. "His name is Lucas. He's a few years older than you, but never had the chance to grow up by our side." The words echoed inside me, making everything I thought was certain in that house start to slowly crumble. Lucas. Just a name, but it carried a weight I never imagined. I repeated it in my head many times, trying to understand what it meant to have someone named Lucas who, until that moment, was a complete stranger to me. My brother. My mother kept sitting in front of me, her expression tired but determined to tell me everything she could. She explained that Lucas was born before I existed, but their lives, and consequently mine, would take a very different path because of him. She spoke of a difficult time, decisions made in the heat of uncertainty, a father who had to choose between work and family, and a mother who, despite all the love, had to make a painful decision to protect all of us. I listened, absorbing every word, every pause, trying to put together the puzzle that had been incomplete until then. That story I didn't know seemed to have shaped my existence in a silent, invisible way. I still remember the moment I asked if there was any photo of him, any place where I could know who he was. My mother hesitated but brought out an old, dusty album where she kept pictures of the family from before. I slowly flipped through the pages, and among faces that looked so familiar, I found a small photo, faded by time, of a boy with a shy smile holding my mother's hand. "That's Lucas," she said, pointing at the photo, "and he's always been part of our story, even if far away." At that moment, I didn't know if I felt anger, sadness, or curiosity. I only knew my life would never be the same. As I flipped through the old album, that photo of Lucas seemed like a portal to a life I never lived, but that was now urgent to me. I saw his smile, shy, almost childlike, and wondered what kind of person he was. Did he like to play? Did he like soccer? Or was he quieter like me? Why then had he never appeared in the stories I grew up hearing? Why was he never mentioned at family gatherings, at parties, or during Sunday conversations? My mother sighed, her eyes filled with an old sadness. "Clara, it was a complicated time. Lucas couldn't stay. Your father and I thought he'd have a better life far from here, and we believed that way he would be safe. I couldn't quite understand. How could someone decide that part of their own family needed to be left behind? My mind filled with questions tripping over one another. Where was Lucas now? Did he know about me? How did he feel? I felt like I had spent years living in a house full of shadows, where some doors were locked tight, and I had never held the key. And for the first time, what once seemed enough, being an only child, felt like a lie I had lived without realizing it. I needed to know more. I had to find Lucas. But for that, I knew I'd have to face my family's silence. The same silence that had for years kept this part of our history hidden. In the days that followed, the letter, the name Lucas, and the old photo kept echoing in my head. I tried to go about my life as usual, but the truth was that nothing felt normal anymore. I was living inside a giant secret, a secret my family had carried alone, and it left me anxious and confused. I tried talking to my mother again, but it was like opening a wound she preferred to keep closed. Each of her words came with invisible weight, as if reliving that story was a punishment. I needed to understand why that silence had lasted so long. Why had they hidden a brother from me? What had happened to him? Did he even want to be found? The nights were the worst. I would wake in the middle of the night, imagining his face, the voice I'd never heard, the scent of a presence I had never felt. I knew nothing about Lucas. No address, no phone number, no real clue. My parents' silence seemed to scream all the answers I longed to know. And I felt like at any moment that house, which had always seemed safe, could collapse. But I couldn't give up. Discovering the truth was my only option. The days after that conversation were a whirlwind of emotions that seemed to have no end. I spent hours in silence trying to piece together a story that had only just begun to be told, but had already left a huge impact inside me. That's when I realized that waiting for answers from my parents wouldn't work anymore. They were keeping the secrets out of fear of the past, and I needed to set the truth free, even if it meant shaking the foundations of my family. I decided I would find Lucas. I didn't know where he was, I didn't know if he wanted to be found, but something inside me said I had to try. I started looking for clues. I went through old documents, asked distant relatives discreetly, searched for any mention of his name in files and old photographs. Every tiny piece of information was like a thread I pulled, hoping it would lead me to him. It was hard. Many doors closed. Eyes avoided mine. Questions were dodged. But every refusal only made me more determined. I could no longer live in ignorance. That hidden brother was part of me, and the silence that separated us was creating a void that could never be filled. I needed to know who he was, where he was, and, above all, if I still had a chance of having a brother in my life. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I became a woman in search of the truth about her own family. I started my search for Lucas by going through the closets in my parents' house. I had always imagined that somewhere, among boxes and old photos, there would be something that could give me a clue, and I wasn't wrong. I found an old photo album covered in dust. The yellowed pages showed images I had never seen before. Family parties, trips, birthdays. But in one of them I noticed something different. A boy I didn't recognize smiling next to my parents. It was him. It was Lucas. Next to the photo, a handwritten note. Lucas, 1985, our secret. My heart raced. Why had this been hidden? And who had written that note? I searched more and found a box with letters and old documents. Among them, a birth certificate with the name Lucas Silva, my missing brother. Each discovery brought me closer but also more afraid. The feeling of breaking into a secret that had been locked away was overwhelming. Even so, I couldn't stop. The truth had already begun to surface and I had to see it through. I knew that to do that I'd have to face my family's resistance, and the fear of what I might uncover, but I was determined to meet my brother no matter the cost. The name Lucas Silva was right in front of me, written on an old yellowed birth certificate, like a ghost my family had tried to hide for years. I held that paper carefully, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination growing inside me. It was as if, suddenly, an invisible part of my life was finally taking shape. I spent hours examining every detail on that certificate. The place of birth, the date, the names of the parents. Everything confirmed that Lucas was indeed my brother, but the question that kept pounding in my mind was, where was he now? Why had he never been part of our lives? With the document in hand, I began to plan the next steps. I needed to find more clues, discover whether he still lived in that town, if he had a family, if he wanted to meet me. But I was also afraid of the unknown, of what this search might reveal. I remembered the nights when, alone in my room, I would imagine who he was. Now the dream felt more real, and this new reality pushed me forward. My mother and father remained silent, but I knew I couldn't wait for answers from them anymore. The truth was in my hands, and I would chase it, even if it meant breaking away from the past my family had tried to bury. Lucas would no longer be a secret. With the birth certificate in hand, I began my first investigations. I called civil registry offices, checked public records, and even searched for him on social media, even though I knew it might be a common name. Every phone call, every click on the computer, was a step into an unknown world I needed to uncover. It felt like stepping into forbidden territory, but there was no turning back. I wanted to understand where Lucas was, how he lived, if he missed me the way I missed him. Answers didn't come quickly. Many times I ran into locked doors or information blocked due to privacy rules. But I kept trying. And one day, a lead emerged. A former neighbor of the family mentioned that Lucas lived in a nearby town, in a modest neighborhood far from the lights I was used to. That lead gave me a new sense of urgency. I began to plan a visit, feeling the mixture of fear and hope that only someone chasing a long-buried secret can understand. Meanwhile, back at home, the atmosphere changed. My parents began to avoid the topic, conversations grew tense, and their eyes would dart away whenever I brought up Lucas. It was as if my search had awakened ghosts they didn't want to face. But for me, the search had already begun, and nothing would stop me now. Determined to find Lucas, I organized my first trip to the town where, according to the few clues I had, he might be living. It was a place that seemed very different from my daily life. Narrower streets, simpler homes, and a slower pace of life. I felt like a stranger in that small town, carrying with me the hope and the weight of years of family silence. I arrived with my heart pounding, unsure of where to start. I asked neighbors, shopkeepers, people I passed on the street, always with his name on the tip of my tongue and a growing desire for answers. Most didn't know anything. Others just looked away or changed the subject as if the name Lucas was a taboo in that place. Every step I took in that neighborhood made me feel closer to him, even if he was still a complete mystery. I imagined how he lived, whether he worked, if he had friends, if he knew about the sister who was searching for him. That night, lying in a hotel room, I went over the few clues I had again and again. It was hard, painful, but also liberating to finally take action instead of just imagining. I knew my search was just beginning, and the road would be full of discoveries. Some good, others maybe too painful to bear. But I was ready. It was time to face whatever came, because this story needed to be told. And I needed to find my brother. In the days following my arrival in that city, I realized that finding Lucas wouldn't be easy. Many people knew the name, but almost no one wanted to talk about him, as if an invisible wall separated that past from the present reality. Each encounter, however brief, brought more questions than answers. A neighbor said he had seen a man matching the description, but no one knew his full name. An elderly woman mentioned that a young man named Lucas once lived there but had disappeared years ago, leaving behind only faint memories. What consumed me was a mixture of hope and frustration. I knew he was there somewhere, but the silence around me seemed to want to push me away. At night, I found myself wondering what could have happened for my brother to vanish like that, as if he had been swallowed by time and forgotten by the people who once knew him. But I couldn't give up. It felt like something inside me was pulling me forward, telling me this search wasn't just mine. It belonged to my entire family, even if they weren't ready to admit it. I began leaving notes and letters in places he might visit, with a contact number and a simple phrase, "I'm your sister. I want to meet you." Despite the fear of the unknown, my determination grew stronger each day. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I was no longer alone in this search. Leaving notes in the neighborhood where Lucas might be was a decision that brought a mix of anxiety and hope. Each note, each message carried the courage I felt in trying to reach someone who, until then, had seemed like a distant shadow in my life. It was like throwing a message in a bottle into the sea, hoping it would reach him. Days passed, and the waiting felt endless. I tried to keep up with my travel routine, but my mind never rested. I imagined 1,000 scenarios. Would he get the message? Would he remember me? Or would he choose to remain hidden, just as so many seemed to want him to? And then, when I least expected it, I received a letter. It was simple, written with a shaky hand, and began with, "I didn't know I had a sister." My heart raced. The words were few, but they carried deep emotion. He said he had heard of me from people in town but never believed it was true. He shared a little about the life he had lived, difficult, full of changes and decisions that distanced him from the family. The letter ended with a request to meet in person, something I didn't hesitate to accept. That small piece of paper was the bridge I needed to cross years of silence and unknowing. The feeling of finally finding an answer was indescribable, but it also brought to the surface the fear of what would come next. I was about to meet my brother. The day of the meeting came faster than I expected. My heart felt like it would leap from my chest, and my hands trembled as I got ready for the occasion that would change my life forever. I didn't know what it would be like to see him, if we would recognize the bond of siblings, or if time and difference had created a chasm larger than I could imagine. We met in a simple cafe, a discreet place he chose to avoid drawing attention. When I saw him for the first time, I felt a mix of emotions I couldn't name. Lucas was different from what I had imagined. His eyes held stories I still needed to hear, and his smile was shy but sincere. We sat and began to talk, first cautiously then more naturally. He spoke about his life, the hardships, the choices that pulled him away from the family, and the emptiness he always felt. I shared my search, my pain through the years of silence, and the hope that guided me. It was a moment of recognition, but also of many unanswered questions. How do you rebuild a relationship that was denied for so long? How do you heal past wounds? Still, I felt that something new was beginning there, a chance to build a family that should never have been separated. At the end of that day, even with fear of the future, there was one certainty. No matter what came next, we were together now. And for the first time, the secret of our family began to unravel. After our first meeting, the conversations between Lucas and me became more frequent and deeper. Each call, each message, was a small step toward undoing years of distance and silence. He began to open up more about his past, revealing stories that, until then, had only been fragments I tried to piece together. Lucas shared that, after being separated, he lived in several homes, constantly moving from city to city, trying to find a place where he felt accepted. The absence of our parents left an invisible wound, and at times the feeling of abandonment was overwhelming. He mentioned that he had tried to find our family as well, but didn't know where to start, and the fear of rejection made him hesitate. That fear, now shared between us, was the greatest obstacle to our reconciliation. But something that surprised me was learning that even from afar he had always carried me in his heart. A silent feeling, a hidden desire to one day be part of the family he had been denied. That invisible connection, which had withstood time and distance, became the foundation for rebuilding what once seemed lost. The journey would be long, filled with challenges and discoveries, but we were no longer alone. Even with the conversations and reunion, I realized that our family's past still loomed over us like a shadow. The wounds left by years of secrets and separation didn't heal instantly. There were painful memories that Lucas carried, and which I was still trying to understand in their full depth. He spoke of abandonment, the loneliness of constant change, and the feeling of being invisible. These weren't just stories. They were echoes of the silence that shaped not only his life but our entire families. As we unraveled those memories, we discovered how every decision our parents made, no matter how difficult, had left deep marks. A cycle of pain and protection that no one really knew how to break. I felt our journey was also about forgiveness, for them, for Lucas, and for myself. Learning to accept the past with all its imperfections was the only way to build a future together. Even so, doubts remained. Would we be able to overcome everything? Were we ready to face the truth no matter how harsh? The answer would only come with time, but the will to move forward was stronger than ever. After the reunion with Lucas, I felt I needed to understand more deeply what my mother had gone through. She had always been a strong woman, but the secret about Lucas seemed like a wound she carried in silence. I decided then to sit down with her and try to hear her side of the story, without hurry, without judgment. She began by talking about her difficult youth, financial hardships, and the pressures from family and society at the time. She revealed how Lucas's pregnancy had been a shock, a moment when everything seemed to collapse. She spoke of choices made not out of lack of love, but from fear and desperation. My mother spoke through tears, but also with a hidden relief, as if she could finally share a burden she had carried alone for years. She explained how distancing Lucas had seemed like the only way to secure a future for him, even if that decision shattered her. Hearing her words gave me a new perspective. It wasn't just a story of secrets and pain, but also of invisible sacrifices and silent love. It was the story of a woman who did what she thought was best, even if the price was too high. In that moment, I realized my search wasn't just for Lucas, but for the entire truth of my family, the truth that only reveals itself when someone has the courage to listen. With my mother's revelations fresh in my memory, I began to view our family's history with new eyes. It was impossible to ignore the echoes of the past that still reverberated in the present, shaping our decisions and emotions. Each hidden secret was a stone in the path, but also a fundamental piece of the puzzle I needed to assemble. Lucas and I often talked about these memories. He spoke of the absences and the moments he felt he didn't belong anywhere, while I shared the stories I grew up hearing, many of them incomplete or distorted by time. I realized that, despite the distance and different experiences, our essence was the same, two sides of the same coin, marked by a shared past that no one could erase. Those echoes brought us even closer, making us promise that together, we would break the cycle of silence and rebuild our story with truth and courage. It was a moment of hope, and also of responsibility. A responsibility we felt deeply but also saw as necessary. As Lucas and I grew closer, our conversations began to revolve around forgiveness, something that seemed so simple in theory, yet carried immense weight in practice. We both had to find a way to forgive not only our parents, but also ourselves for the wounds the past had caused. Sitting down to talk about the mistakes, the silences, and the painful choices was an essential step. We discovered that our resentments, while understandable, only made it harder to build something new. We had to make space for compassion and understanding. To forgive didn't mean to forget or erase what had happened, but to accept the whole story, with all its flaws and imperfections. This process wasn't easy. There were tears, arguments, moments of doubt. But instead of driving us apart, these differences ended up strengthening our bond. It was fascinating to realize how two people who had grown up far from each other could still share so much, from the way we laughed to certain quirks that, unknowingly, seemed inherited from the same source. We also decided it was time to visit the places that had shaped our family's story. Lucas had never been to the house where I grew up, and I had never set foot in the neighborhoods he had lived in. This exchange of experiences started to build a real bridge, a common ground where our memories could finally meet. With each visit, we felt a bit more like we belonged, as if, little by little, we were rebuilding what time and silence had tried to erase. It was a mix of nostalgia, discovery, and, above all, hope. Our path was no longer just about the past or hidden secrets, but about the future. A future that, for the first time in a long time, seemed possible to build together. Not everyone in the family welcomed our reconnection. Although Lucas and I were committed to rebuilding the lost bond, some people preferred to maintain the silence and barriers that had been built over the years. We felt this resistance subtly but clearly: suspicious glances, veiled comments, and even the withdrawal of some close relatives. It was hard to deal with that silent rejection. I had hoped that reuniting siblings would make everyone happy, but I realized that the past still held wounds that weren't ready to heal. Some feared that reconnecting might unearth uncomfortable truths, while others perhaps didn't want to face reality. Talking to Lucas about it was essential. Together we learned that, despite the desire for reconciliation, not everyone was at the same stage or willing to face the truth. Accepting that was a hard but necessary lesson, so we wouldn't let these resistances destroy what we were building. We decided our focus should be on our relationship without rushing or outside pressure. We knew some bridges would take time to rebuild, or might never be, but we couldn't let that drive us apart. This phase showed us that healing family bonds requires patience and resilience. And above all, the courage to keep going even when the path is full of stones. As the months passed and Lucas and I deepened our relationship, details of the past began to surface. Things that had been buried in silence until then. Small family secrets hidden in old papers, faded photos, and fragmented stories started to emerge strongly, raising new questions and unexpected revelations. One day, while going through a box of documents my mother had saved, I found letters exchanged between our grandparents. Messages that spoke of disagreements, broken promises, and even tough decisions made to protect the family, even at the cost of truth. These letters revealed a side of the story we had never been told, exposing tensions and conflicts that explained many of the secrets and the distance that had separated Lucas from us. As I shared these findings with him, I realized we were uncovering a mystery that spanned generations. Though painful, these revelations helped us better understand the context behind the decisions and the complexity of family dynamics. It was no longer just about the two of us, but an entire timeline marked by difficult choices and unforeseen consequences. That moment was pivotal to our journey. We were ready to face the truth, however uncomfortable it might be, and turn those secrets into bridges for a more transparent and united future. As we unraveled our family's secrets, something surprising began to happen between Lucas and me. The connection we felt wasn't just a product of our conversations or discoveries, but something deeper. A bond that seemed to transcend time and the circumstances that had separated us. There were moments when, even in silence, a single glance was enough for us to understand each other's feelings. This growing closeness brought an unexpected comfort, a sense of belonging that both of us had longed for since childhood. Conversations that were once difficult became natural, and our trust in each other blossomed authentically. We realized that, despite the lost years, we were part of something greater, a bond that time hadn't managed to erase. This feeling strengthened our commitment to rebuilding the family, not just for ourselves but for future generations. We wanted to break the cycle of silence and abandonment, to bring forth the love that had always been there, even if hidden. We knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but we were ready to face it together, with open hearts and the certainty that we were finally true siblings. One of the most striking discoveries on our journey came through an old photo album I found at my mother's house. The yellowed pages held images that told silent stories, frozen moments in time, revealing details about our family that had never been mentioned in words. Each photo was a fragment of our history, parties, gatherings, smiles, and even worried looks that spoke more than words ever could. That's when I saw a photo of Lucas as a child, with a distant gaze, surrounded by people who seemed happy, yet harbored silent tensions. Showing those images to Lucas was an intense moment. Together we tried to reconstruct the context and emotions behind those snapshots, realizing the photographs offered valuable clues about what had really happened, the decisions and secrets that shaped our childhood. Those images also helped humanize the past. They weren't just distant stories but real memories of people who loved and, despite their flaws, tried to do the best they could. It was an important chapter, allowing us to look back with more understanding and prepare our hearts for the next steps of this journey. As I continued exploring old boxes in my mother's house, I found a set of letters carefully stored, hidden between books and time-worn papers. The letters were exchanged between my mother and a distant aunt, containing intimate accounts of the challenges they faced, the family dilemmas, and the tough decisions they made to protect the family. Reading those letters felt like opening a window to a past I had never known. A past full of worries, fears, and above all veiled love. The words revealed the complexity of the emotions behind the choices made, showing that nothing had ever been simple or black and white. When I shared the letters with Lucas, we realized that many of the secrets kept for so long had deep reasons, the result of a difficult context that had permanently shaped our family. It was a moment of empathy and understanding that brought us even closer. These discoveries strengthened our commitment to seek the truth, not to judge but to understand and heal the wounds that still lingered. As Lucas and I deepened our discoveries, we realized that the revelations were beginning to affect not only us but other family members as well. Old conversations, once forgotten or avoided, began to resurface, bringing out emotions many had tried to hide. Not everyone was ready to face those truths. Some withdrew, frightened by the intensity of the memories and the possibility of reliving old pain. Others, however, showed interest in understanding what had really happened and in joining the reconstruction of our family relationship. We felt the weight of that responsibility. It was no longer just about Lucas and me, but about an entire network of people connected by blood, history, and deep emotions. We realized that our reunion was opening doors to necessary dialogues, ones that could help heal wounds that had existed for decades. This phase was challenging but also full of hope. We understood that the truth, however hard it might be, was essential to freeing our family from the past and building a more honest future. We decided it was time to revisit the house where we had grown up, a place full of memories both joyful and painful. For me, that space had always been a refuge, despite the stories whispered within its walls. For Lucas, it would be the first time stepping into that home that had been part of our history, even from a distance. As we opened the door, the old smell and deep silence unleashed a flood of emotions. Every room seemed to hold whispered secrets, untold stories, forgotten laughter, and silent tears. As we walked through the hallways, we shared memories that until then had existed only as fragments in our minds. Revisiting that place helped us realize how alive the past still was. In the marks on the walls, the objects left behind, the dusty photos on the shelf. It was a space where joy and pain intertwined, forming the backdrop of our family's story. It was a transformative experience. By physically revisiting our past, we began to build a more solid present, one based on acceptance and a desire to move forward. After so many meetings, conversations, and discoveries, Lucas and I felt that we were truly rebuilding something greater than just a sibling relationship. We were shaping a new story, one marked by the courage to face the past and the hope for a different future. We understood that forgiveness and understanding aren't straight lines, but paths full of curves and detours. There would still be challenges ahead, people we'd need to give time and space to, but above all, we knew the journey was worth it. We decided it was important to document our story not just for ourselves but for future generations. We wanted them to know that despite the difficulties, love and truth can be powerful forces to transform lives. With that awareness, we planned regular meetings, honest conversations, and a commitment to keep communication open, elements that had once been missing and had now become pillars of our relationship. This was only one chapter, the beginning of a path that promised to be long but filled with meaning. After all the emotional turmoil, revelations, and reunions, Lucas and I felt ready to begin a new chapter in our story. No longer separated by secrets and distance, but united by the sincere desire to build a true bond, with no masks or omissions. We organized a small gathering with close relatives, where we finally shared some of what we had discovered and what we were feeling. The reaction was mixed. There were tears, tight hugs, but also resistance and doubts. It felt like the family was slowly being rebuilt, brick by brick, amid conflicting emotions. That moment, though difficult, was liberating. It was the first time in a long while that the silence was broken and the truth, even if painful, could be heard. Lucas and I felt stronger knowing we were not alone on this journey. We knew there would still be challenges ahead, but the certainty of being together gave us hope to keep going, creating a new story for our family. After our reunion with the family, Lucas and I knew the real challenge was just beginning, relearning how to trust. It wasn't merely a matter of words or intentions, but of daily actions that would truly show we were willing to change the course of our story. Rebuilding trust meant confronting old fears, overcoming years of distrust, and accepting that the journey would be slow with many ups and downs. Each conversation, every gesture, every promise kept was a step toward a stronger, more authentic bond. We realized that to do this we needed to be transparent, never hiding our struggles, and patient, not only with others but most importantly with ourselves. There were days when insecurity hit hard, but the desire to stay together was stronger. This phase taught us that trust is an ongoing effort, one that requires the courage to be vulnerable and the willingness to press forward, even in the face of doubt. As Lucas and I deepened our connection, we began sharing stories we'd never told anyone before. These weren't just recollections but deeply personal pieces of our lives. Moments of joy, pain, uncertainty, and growth. Opening up was liberating but also challenging. Often we feared judgment or that we'd reopen wounds we thought had healed. Yet by sharing these experiences, we came to know one another in a much deeper, more genuine way. These confessions strengthened our bond, proved that despite time and distance, we could build a relationship rooted in honesty and mutual respect. These untold stories filled in the gaps left by the family's silence, adding greater meaning to our journey. We discovered that storytelling holds power far beyond memory. It's a tool for healing, uniting, and transforming. Amid all the major revelations and intense moments, Lucas and I came to appreciate the small things. A shared morning coffee, an unexpected message during the day, a simple hug. These everyday gestures, though seemingly ordinary, took on profound meaning in this new phase of our relationship. We learned that you don't always need grand gestures to strengthen ties. Sometimes, it's the little moments that build the foundation of a true, lasting connection. Every small act of attention, every word of support, every moment of presence became a brick in what we were creating together. Valuing these simple things brought lightness to our journey. It helped us celebrate the present and focus on what truly mattered: presence, care, and affection. Thus, our relationship began to breathe and glow, affirming that familial love often lives in the details we overlook. Despite our progress, Lucas and I still faced distrust, both internal and external. After years of silence and secrets, Doubt was a natural defense mechanism we had to acknowledge and overcome. At times, questions arose. Would this reconciliation last? Were we truly ready to change the direction of our story? These doubts lingered in our minds and, at times, erected invisible walls between us. To break through those barriers, we had to be honest about our fears and insecurities. We created space for open dialogue where no concern was dismissed or judged. This transparency was essential to dismantling resistance and building trust. We learned that doubts aren't foes, but challenges that, when met with respect and patience, can become bridges to a stronger relationship. After many private conversations, Lucas and I decided it was time to extend this reconnection to other family members. We organized a simple Sunday afternoon gathering to share part of our journey and open a space for long-suppressed dialogue. The atmosphere was tense and full of expectation. Some relatives were curious, others hesitant. Many carried their own stories and resentments, making the environment complex. But gradually words began to flow, memories were shared, and silence gave way to honest conversation. It was touching to see that, despite years of separation, there remained a latent desire for belonging and unity. It wasn't perfect. Some weren't ready and a few disagreements surfaced, but that first step was crucial. We left that day feeling we had opened a door to healing, an invitation for everyone to find their place in our renewed family history. At that gathering, we discovered everyone carried their own versions of the past, untold stories, hidden secrets, and unspoken feelings. Each person had a unique perspective, sometimes aligning with, sometimes contradicting what Lucas and I had experienced. These multiple narratives created a complex mosaic of our family's history, showing that truth is never singular but composed of intertwining layers. It was both fascinating and challenging to try to understand where memories converged and where they diverged. Learning others' stories helped us widen our view, nurture empathy, and realize that the past, no matter how complicated, didn't have to define our future. Each narrative was an essential piece in assembling the family's puzzle. This process united us in unexpected ways, proving that dialogue and listening are powerful tools for rebuilding relationships. After so many conversations and gatherings, Lucas and I decided to host a family lunch. Simple yet deeply meaningful. We wanted a space where stories could be shared without hurry, where laughter and memories would mingle with the food and affection we were finally able to give each other. The day was sunny and the table was thoughtfully set with dishes my mother used to make, flavors that evoked comfort and a sense of belonging. As people arrived, I felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Could this lunch become a turning point for our family? Talk started shyly with nervous laughs, but gradually defenses lowered. Stories were told, memories unearthed, and the atmosphere became filled with genuine emotion. It was incredible to see that, despite past hurts, there was still room for love and reconciliation. At the end of the day, watching the family together, I felt we were taking concrete steps toward a new future. One where secrets became shared stories and where our familial bond was truly growing stronger. During that lunch, laughter and recollection set the stage for the moment everyone had both feared and awaited. The revelation of the secret that had remained hidden for so many years, a truth that would forever change our family's perception. My great-aunt, always reserved and discreet, rose with an envelope in hand. She asked for silence and, with a trembling voice, began to share the story she had carried in secret for decades. But if you're reading this, it means you overcame the fear I never could. I know you'll find me. And when that happens, I'll be ready. With love, Lucas. Tears fell before I even finished reading. Every word was a confirmation of the bond that had always existed between us, even across distance. My heart was breaking and being made whole at the same time. I had to find him, now more than ever. With the letter in hand, I felt renewed. Lucas was waiting for me. Maybe not in that house, but somewhere on some street, still believing the past could be mended. Dona Elza told me he had once mentioned a nearby town, Aruna. Said he needed a fresh start. Wanted to hide from the past, but maybe also hoped to be found. I thanked her, said goodbye with a tight heart, and left. The road to Aruna was narrow, surrounded by ancient trees that seemed to hold secrets. I wondered what I would find. What if he had changed his name? Started over completely? But there was still hope. He'd left clues. He wrote that letter. He wanted me to find him. When I arrived, I rented a simple room at a guest house. I was exhausted but determined. I would start the search again, street by street, face by face, until I found the one who should never have been taken from me. On my first walk through Aruna, something caught my eye. A music store. In the window, a worn guitar with a note attached. Music heals wounds that words cannot reach. I went in. The soft sound of a piano filled the air. The owner was a calm, middle-aged man with a gentle voice. I showed him an old photo of Lucas, smiling beside our parents. He looked at it, then nodded. He used to play here. One of the best musicians I've ever seen. But he didn't talk much. I asked where he was now. Left the city not long ago. Said he had to move on. But he left this. He went to the counter and picked up a notebook. Inside were music sheets, scribbles, and another letter. Addressed to me. If someone comes asking for me, give them this, he explained. With trembling hands I opened it. It was Lucas's handwriting again. And once again he seemed to predict my every move. Clara, you're close. I know you are. When I left the last letter, I felt like I was no longer running. I was, for the first time, being found. There are things I need to tell you. Things our family never had the courage to say. But I want you to know, I never stopped thinking about you. Even without photos, without news, without clear memories, you were the idea that kept me standing. I know we lost the chance to grow up together, to share birthdays, secrets, and fears. But I don't want life to end like this, with silence between us. I know it's hard and maybe you're hurt by the lies. But if you still want to find me, go to the city of São Rafael. That's where I am now. Waiting. With love. Lucas. The letter hit me like a hug and a punch at the same time. He was alive. And he wanted to be found. São Rafael was a few hours away. It was the last link. The final chapter before reunion. And I was ready. I packed quickly, barely thinking. Every fold of fabric, every zipped bag felt like sealing a promise. I hit the road early, heart pounding. São Rafael was bigger than the other towns, busier, more anonymous. The idea that he could be anywhere made me anxious. What if I didn't recognize him? What if he had changed? But the truth is, no matter how he looked, I would know him. Not by his face, but by the absence he filled. As soon as I arrived, I went straight to the bus terminal. Maybe he worked there or had left more clues. On a message board, between job ads and rental offers, was a notebook page with a few verses scribbled. Even without seeing you, I remember you. Even without knowing, I wait for you. The handwriting was his. And it was signed us. He was there nearby. Maybe watching me. Maybe hoping I'd follow the trail. I spent the whole day asking around, cafes, shops, libraries. I showed the photo, explained it was my last chance. Some said they'd seen someone like him. A quiet man who played guitar in parks or helped at a small community center. I went there. It was a simple place with colorful walls drawn by children and the smell of hot soup in the air. A kind woman greeted me. Lucas? Yes, he helps here sometimes. Comes on Wednesday afternoons. I looked at the clock. Wednesday, 2 p.m. My heart raced. She pointed to the back of the hall. And there he was. Sitting on the floor, surrounded by children, gently strumming an old guitar and singing softly. There was no doubt. It was him. Even older, with a beard and the marks of time, he was my brother. For a moment I just stood there watching. Time froze. Sounds turned to mist. He looked up and saw me. And in that instant the past stopped hurting. He slowly set the guitar down as if not to scare the moment away. We stared at each other for seconds that felt like hours. No words. Just a silence full of everything. I walked toward him. He stepped forward. And then we hugged. A hug that had taken decades. A hug that said, I've been looking for you all my life. I cried. So did he. There were no more secrets. No more walls. You came, he said, voice choked. I never stopped looking, I replied. We sat together, both still trembling. He told me everything. How he was taken away, how he grew up feeling guilty for something he didn't understand. How he tried to forget us just to survive, but never could. I shared my side too, the discovery, the anger, the loneliness. And there, between hard truths and invented memories, we began to recognize each other as true siblings. In the days that followed, we were inseparable. He showed me the places where he now lived, introduced me to the people who became his new family. Gradually, we rebuilt what time had destroyed. We didn't erase the past, it remained. But now it was part of a story told, no longer hidden. When I returned home, I brought more than memories, I brought my brother. Lucas decided to visit our old hometown, to see our parents again, to close the cycle. There were still wounds to heal, but his presence was already healing. In the living room where everything began, he walked in. My father cried. My mother broke down. And finally there were words. Forgive me for leaving you. Forgive us for taking you away. And then we all sat together. For the first time, the house felt different, fuller, more alive. Our family story would no longer be built on silence. It was finally being told. We reached the end of this journey knowing that what we built together goes far beyond the stories told or the secrets revealed. Lucas and I learned that family is, above all, a legacy of love, courage, and resilience. We know our story doesn't end here. The legacy we're creating is for future generations so they never again bear the burden of the past alone. With openness and unity, we've created a solid foundation for our family to grow and flourish. Looking back now, I see not just the hardships, but also the strength we had to face each challenge and the hope that guided us. This story, told in first person, is a testament that no matter how complicated the past, there's always room for reconciliation and true love. And so we close this chapter certain that the future will be built with respect, truth, and deep affection. If you've come this far, know that you're not alone. Every family carries secrets, wounds, and silent battles, but also the hope of new beginnings, forgiveness, and genuine love. She revealed details about a difficult choice our grandfather made, one that affected not only his life but all of ours. As we listened, the pieces of the puzzle began to fit into place. At last, we understood the reasons behind certain behaviors, the silences and distances that had divided us. It was painful but also liberating. This revelation surfaced complex emotions, sadness, understanding, even relief. But most of all, it opened the path to healing. From that moment on, we knew nothing else could be hidden, and that truth would be the foundation for reconstructing our family's story. After this deeply hidden secret was revealed, the atmosphere changed significantly. Not everyone was ready to face the intensity of the newly exposed truth. Some family members were shocked, others fell silent, while a few began to question everything they thought they knew. Lucas and I found ourselves at the center of this emotional storm, trying to provide the support our family needed, even while processing our own feelings. It was painful to witness so much suffering, but we understood it was a necessary step for reconciliation. Conversations became more open but also tense. Doubts arose, accusations were made, and people asked for explanations. We had to learn to listen without judgment, speak calmly, and respect everyone's boundaries. It was a period filled with great challenges but also growth. Gradually, we realized that confronting the consequences of truth was the only way to heal old wounds and build a stronger family. After all the emotional turmoil and confrontations, we began seeing clear signs that our family was truly rediscovering unity. Small gestures gained immense significance. A spontaneous hug, a call to check in, an invitation for coffee. Lucas and I realized that, despite the difficulty, truth was enabling us to build relationships based on honesty and mutual respect. The wounds remained, but the desire to overcome them together was greater. We began organizing more frequent gatherings, now lighter in spirit, centered on bonding activities like birthdays, simple celebrations, and outdoor outings. Consistent presence became a balm for old pain. With each step, we sensed we were not only rebuilding our family but also creating new, happier memories for future generations. As we moved forward, we recognized the healing power of shared memories. Revisiting happy moments from the past, listening to the elders' stories, recalling family traditions, all of this became a remedy for lingering wounds. We held storytelling sessions where each person could share a favorite memory, one that warmed the heart and brought a smile. It was astonishing how these recollections revealed facets of our family that had been forgotten or hidden. These memories renewed a sense of belonging and strengthened intergenerational bonds. They also created space for younger family members to appreciate the importance of heritage and legacy. Through these recollections, we were not just healing the past, we were preparing a more united, loving future. With the family more united and wounds beginning to heal, Lucas and I focused on the future. We knew it was time to turn everything we had learned and experienced into something tangible, a legacy for the next generations. We decided to create a digital album, a collection of photos, stories, and documents charting our family's journey, including revealed secrets, reconciliations, and moments of overcoming. We wanted it to be accessible to everyone so no one would have to carry the mysteries or pain alone. We also planned annual gatherings, inviting relatives of all ages to come together, share experiences and strengthen the bonds. We understood maintaining connection would require ongoing effort, but we were prepared for the commitment. These plans brought renewed purpose and hope, a future where our family could thrive together with truth as a foundation and love as a guide. With all the steps taken, wounds beginning to heal and a stronger family bond, we decided to hold a special celebration, an event symbolizing our reconciliation and the fresh start we were building together. We carefully planned every detail, the music our grandparents loved, dishes from childhood, both old and new photos decorating the space. More than a party, it was meant to be a living symbol of the transformation we had gone through. On the day, family members of all ages came together with genuine smiles, tight hugs, and eyes reflecting gratitude for that moment. There were tears, laughter, and heartfelt words expressing what this new beginning meant. That celebration wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the start of a new era, one in which the past, no matter how difficult, became the foundation for a future stronger, filled with love and unity. The next morning, I walked through the narrow streets of the neighborhood where Lucas supposedly lived. The sun had barely risen and the city still yawned in silence. I passed a simple house with a faded facade and an unkempt garden when something made me stop. It was the rusty mailbox. On it, in nearly faded letters, I read, Alt Silva. My heart raced. It wasn't a rare name, but in that context, in that neighborhood with all clues pointing there, I had to know. I rang the doorbell with trembling fingers and the sound echoed softly. I waited. No response. I knocked on the door and again silence. The house seemed empty, yet I remained there as if my presence might summon destiny. Neighbors began watching me, curious and suspicious. A woman sweeping the sidewalk across the street stared at me firmly, then slowly approached. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked. I nodded, my voice choked. "Lucas Silva. Do you know if he lives here?" She hesitated. Then, in a near whisper, almost like a secret, she said, "He used to, but I haven't seen him in a while." Left suddenly. My heart tightened. Was he running from something? Or someone? The lady, who I later learned was named Dona Elsa, invited me in for coffee. I sensed she knew more than she was willing to say. I sat at her simple kitchen table as she poured coffee into cracked cups. "Lucas was a good boy," she began. "Quiet but polite. Never had visitors. Never talked about family." That hurt. Knowing he'd grown up alone, away from me, in silence. I asked if she knew where he'd gone. He didn't say. He just left a letter. For me. But I never read it. Said it was to be given if someone from the family ever came looking. My eyes widened. "Do you still have the letter?" She nodded slowly, stood up and went to another room. When she returned, she held a yellowed envelope. My name was handwritten on the front. For Clara. My hands trembled. That letter was a bridge between us. I opened it slowly, heart pounding. And there, in simple, carefully written words, was the first contact between me and my missing brother. He knew one day I would look for him. And he had waited for that. "Clara, if you're reading this, it means the silence in our family has finally been broken. I thought about you every day of my life. I always knew I had a sister, even if only through vague memories, whispered stories in the dark. They took me from home when I was little. Said it was for my own good, that it was dangerous to stay there. I never really understood. I grew up with questions and no answers. But even in absence, you were always with me. I hoped that one day you'd come. I never had the courage to look for you, maybe out of fear of what I'd find." My heart tightened. For years, I had lived not knowing that such an important part of my family was hidden away like a locked and forgotten book. "Who is he?" I managed to ask, trying to hold back the tears threatening to fall. "His name is Lucas. He's a few years older than you, but never had the chance to grow up by our side." The words echoed inside me, making everything I thought was certain in that house start to slowly crumble. Lucas. Just a name, but it carried a weight I never imagined. I repeated it in my head many times, trying to understand what it meant to have someone named Lucas who, until that moment, was a complete stranger to me. My brother. My mother kept sitting in front of me, her expression tired but determined to tell me everything she could. She explained that Lucas was born before I existed, but their lives, and consequently mine, would take a very different path because of him. She spoke of a difficult time, decisions made in the heat of uncertainty, a father who had to choose between work and family, and a mother who, despite all the love, had to make a painful decision to protect all of us. I listened, absorbing every word, every pause, trying to put together the puzzle that had been incomplete until then. That story I didn't know seemed to have shaped my existence in a silent, invisible way. I still remember the moment I asked if there was any photo of him, any place where I could know who he was. My mother hesitated but brought out an old, dusty album where she kept pictures of the family from before. I slowly flipped through the pages and among faces that looked so familiar, I found a small photo, faded by time, of a boy with a shy smile holding my mother's hand. "That's Lucas," she said, pointing at the photo, "and he's always been part of our story, even if far away." At that moment, I didn't know if I felt anger, sadness, or curiosity. I only knew my life would never be the same. As I flipped through the old album, that photo of Lucas seemed like a portal to a life I never lived, but that was now urgent to me. I saw his smile, shy, almost childlike, and wondered what kind of person he was. Did he like to play? Did he like soccer? Or was he quieter like me? Why then had he never appeared in the stories I grew up hearing? Why was he never mentioned at family gatherings, at parties, or during Sunday conversations? My mother sighed, her eyes filled with an old sadness. "Clara, it was a complicated time. Lucas couldn't stay. Your father and I thought he'd have a better life far from here, and we believed that way he would be safe." I couldn't quite understand. How could someone decide that part of their own family needed to be left behind? My mind filled with questions, tripping over one another. Where was Lucas now? Did he know about me? How did he feel? I felt like I had spent years living in a house full of shadows, where some doors were locked tight, and I had never held the key. And for the first time, what once seemed enough, being an only child, felt like a lie I had lived without realizing it. I needed to know more. I had to find Lucas. But for that, I knew I'd have to face my family's silence. The same silence that had, for years, kept this part of our history hidden. In the days that followed, the letter, the name Lucas, and the old photo kept echoing in my head. I tried to go about my life as usual, but the truth was that nothing felt normal anymore. I was living inside a giant secret, a secret my family had carried alone, and it left me anxious and confused. I tried talking to my mother again, but it was like opening a wound she preferred to keep closed. Each of her words came with invisible weight, as if reliving that story was a punishment. I needed to understand why that silence had lasted so long. Why had they hidden a brother from me? What had happened to him? Did he even want to be found? The nights were the worst. I would wake in the middle of the night, imagining his face, the voice I'd never heard, the scent of a presence I had never felt. I knew nothing about Lucas. No address, no phone number, no real clue. My parents' silence seemed to scream all the answers I longed to know. And I felt like at any moment that house, which had always seemed safe, could collapse. But I couldn't give up. Discovering the truth was my only option. The days after that conversation were a whirlwind of emotions that seemed to have no end. I spent hours in silence trying to piece together a story that had only just begun to be told, but had already left a huge impact inside me. That's when I realized that waiting for answers from my parents wouldn't work anymore. They were keeping the secrets out of fear of the past, and I needed to set the truth free, even if it meant shaking the foundations of my family. I decided I would find Lucas. I didn't know where he was, I didn't know if he wanted to be found, but something inside me said I had to try. I started looking for clues. I went through old documents, asked distant relatives discreetly, searched for any mention of his name in files and old photographs. Every tiny piece of information was like a thread I pulled, hoping it would lead me to him. It was hard. Many doors closed. If this story touched your heart, share it, comment, and hold close those who are with you today. Because only together can we turn wounds into strength and silence into voice. Subscribe to the channel and join me on this journey of discovery, where every revealed secret is a chance to heal and every step taken brings us closer to true family connection. Don't wait until tomorrow to start healing with your heart today. We're in this together, and this story is still unfolding.